All right, welcome to Pro Football First 50 Years, where we take the past and we bring it back to life. Now, I'm strictly talking the first 50 years here, 1920 to 1970. I mean, sure, you can go online, especially if you're going to go back and check out a game from like the 20s or the 30s, and you can find a box score, who won, who lost, who scored a touchdown, how far a field goal was someone kicked, where the game was played at, what the attendance was. You might find starting lineups for each team, but exactly what happened during the game. Well, thanks to old newspaper articles, we get to take a little bit of a deeper dive into each and every game during the first 50 years of professional football. Now, a little news flash here for you. Ain't no fancy videos or nothing like that. All there is you and me for the next 30 to 60 minutes. So if that's all right with you, let's get it on in today's game. The opening day for both these teams, the 1959 season. Couple big hitters right here. The 1957 champions, the 1958 champions meet. The first game of the season, September 27th, 1959. The Detroit Lions take on the Baltimore Colts at Memorial Stadium. Now, for one of these teams, it would be a very successful season. Very, very successful season. For the other team, it would be a major, major disappointment. They were going in the opposite direction fast. You're talking about, well, let's see, what do we got? The 1950, between the 50s, from 50 to 59, half of the champions from the 1950s are in this game. The 1952 Lions, the 1953 Lions, the 1957 Lions, the 1958 Colts, and the 1959 Colts. So, these two teams right here, powerhouses, but only this is very disappointing for both teams. Let's pull up the Lions first here, and they were very, very, very bad season for them. I mean, and even the teams that they beat were not very good. I mean, my goodness gracious. If you look here, I mean, the Lions here. No, this is the Colts. Here we go. Boom. There we go. Now, the Lions had somewhat of a successful exhibition season. They played 7 games, for crying out loud. 7 preseason games and 12 regular season games. Could you imagine them doing that nowadays? I mean, they had somewhat of a successful. Now this is an error right here. They lost. This is Pro Football Archives. I don't know how to contact them. I don't even know if they even care. But this is wrong. They lost to the Cardinals. They did not beat the Cardinals 21-19. They lost to the Cardinals 19-21. But even so, they beat the Eagles, they beat the Browns, and then they whooped up on the Redskins. They had a tie. So I mean, it's a relatively successful exhibition season. I mean, one thing about it was exhibition. Once they got into the regular season, basically, if you look at this, I mean, after the first 4 weeks of the season, the Lions were almost out of any championship race. I mean, they lost the first 4 games. Spoiler alert, they would lose this game, although they were winning for a while. So, but they lost the first 4 games of the season, and you lose 4 games in a 12-game season. You're almost pretty much out of any hope at all of winning the championship, and that would have been the case because the Colts won the division with a 9-3 record. But I mean, they beat the Rams, who only won 2 games all year. Then they beat the Rams again, who only won 2 games all year. Then you come down here, and then they beat the Chicago Cardinals, who only won 2 games all year. So, yeah, the 3 games the Lions even won were against horrible teams. So this was a major disappointment for the Detroit Lions. Now, for the Colts, on the other hand, obviously this would be, back-to-back NFL champions? Anybody? Huh? I mean, they had a very successful preseason. They whooped up on the college all-stars 29-0. Then they whooped up on I'm a Giant fan and whooped up on my Giants. But this is exhibition now. But they beat the Redskins. They beat the Steelers. And they lost a couple games here to the Eagles and the Cardinals. But once again, it was exhibition. But even so, they finished the exhibition season at 4-2. Very successful. Then they were in a dogfight for a while, all season long. With the Western Division wound up being very tight knit. The Colts would wind up with 3 losses. The Bears would wind up with 4 losses. The 49ers and the Packers would wind up with 5 losses. So it was very a tight race. Most of it, though, was against the San Francisco 49ers, because the San Francisco 49ers actually pulled out to a 6-1 record after 7 games. They would pretty much fall apart in the final 5 games of the season, losing 4 of their final 5 games to finish 7-5. But after 7 weeks, San Francisco 49ers were 6-1, and they were in first place, and the Colts were trying to chase them. They would catch them, and the Colts would beat the 49ers here this game, and then the second to last game of the season, they would win. I mean, they played the 49ers, then they played the Rams, then they played the 49ers, and then they played the Rams. And then, of course, then the championship game. I said this many a time, it doesn't matter, but the Giants were winning this game going into the fourth quarter 9-7. Then the Colts erupted for 24 straight points. They'd go up 31-9. It was over with at that point in time. The Giants scored a touchdown with about a minute and a half or so to go in the game to make it look somewhat kind of close, but a well-deserved championship for the Baltimore Colts. And of course, the Colts would be really good throughout the 60s and into the very early 70s, 70, 71. They would go to the AFC Championship game where they would lose to the Miami Dolphins 21-0. After that, the Colts were not too good for a while. They started getting rid of a lot of their players, and then with Burt Jones coming on, then they started coming back in the mid-70s and all. And then, of course, they hung around Baltimore for a little while, and then, of course, as we all know, in the 80s, they wound up moving to Indianapolis, unfortunately. But it is what it is. But this game here was played at Memorial. Let me zoom out. Memorial Stadium. So let's see what Wikipedia's got to say on Memorial Stadium. Just a classic stadium. Just, just old time football, stadium. Of course, the Baltimore Orioles played there as well too. So some very successful, especially in the 60s. I mean, the Orioles. I mean, my goodness, from the mid 60s to the early 70s, man, they were a powerhouse. They were a powerhouse. All right, let's see, share screen, Wikipedia here. Baltimore Memorial Stadium, Wikipedia. All right, here we go. Baltimore Memorial Stadium was a multi-purpose stadium in Baltimore, Maryland, that formerly stood on 33rd Street on an oversized block officially called Venable Park, a former city park from the 1920s. The site was bound by Ellerslie Avenue to the west, 36th Street to the north, and Edna Road to the east. 2 stadiums were located here: a 1922 version known primarily as Baltimore Stadium or Municipal Stadium, and a rebuilt double-deck multi-sport stadium completed in mid-1954 and rechristened Baltimore Memorial Stadium, or Memorial Stadium for short. Memorial Stadium was launched as Municipal Stadium, also sometimes known as Baltimore Stadium or Venable Stadium, which they make up their mind. Designed by it was built in 1922 over a 6-month period at the urging of the mayor in a previously undeveloped area just north beyond the city's iconic rows of row houses. It was primarily a football stadium, a large horseshoe with an earthen mound exterior and its open end with a large stone gateway. In this configuration, it seated anywhere from 70 to 80,000 people. Well, in its early years, it hosted various public and private high school and college level games. In July 1944, Municipal Stadium was pressed into service as a baseball park by the Baltimore Orioles of the International League. Dun, 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 dun. Well, then they put a second deck on. The first Baltimore Colts franchise terminated operations for financial reasons at the end of the 1950 season. Community support for a second NFL franchise remained strong, however, and late in 1952, a group of Baltimore businessmen pooled their resources in a bid to win a new league franchise. A Bring Back the Colts drive launched in December 1952 generated the pre-sale of 15,000 season tickets in just 6 weeks. The campaign made an impression, and Baltimore, then the sixth largest city in the United States, was awarded an expansion team for the 1953 NFL season. It's just weird because you figure it's like, if there was a team there that didn't do well, financially, why do we bring back another team? But hey, it worked out well for them, that's for sure. With the NFL back and realistic rumors simultaneously circulating of the arrival of Major League Baseball, the second deck construction was begun during the summer of 1953. First, 2 groups of sections were built facing the 50-yard line. Then they extended toward the south end, completing the upper deck horseshoe. Additional plans to fully enclose the stadium and add a roof to the upper tier were never implemented, although an extra upper deck section would be added on each side in 1964. Work accelerated in November 1953 when the St. Louis Browns of the American League were announced to be moving to Baltimore to become the new Major League version of the Baltimore Orioles. To begin play in April 1954, the city's first Major League franchise in over 50 years. Well, on April 15, 1954, thousands of Baltimoreans jammed city streets as the new Oriole paraded downtown at the Baltimore City Hall. 46,000 people watched the Orioles beat the White Sox 3-1 to win their home opener. There you go, right here. Orioles playing one last Major League home night games at the stadium, September 14, 1991. Such a shame. Abandonment. Dual-use stadiums was not without its critics, however. Traffic and a parking shortage made accessing the stadium difficult. Concrete poles blocked views, and unsheltered areas grew hot in the summer. Most of the seats were bench style, with few having chair backs, let alone more modern amenities. The NFL's Baltimore Colts were the first to express deep dissatisfaction and to seek a new venue. In addition to suboptimal conditions at Memorial Stadium, capacity was a concern, with the Colts selling out every home game from the start of the '64 season to the end of 1970 and unable to meet demand for season tickets. It's a shame. But 1970, Carl Rosenblum announced that he was seeking a 500-acre parcel in one of 3 suburban Baltimore counties for construction of a new stadium. Aha! A new $20 million football-only facility was planned, with Rosenblum adamant that the team would be leaving Memorial Stadium expeditiously due to unhappiness with the stadium conditions and ongoing irritation over a September legal dispute with the city over whether a Monday Night Football game could be hosted at the site. A dispute which Rosenblum characterized as the end of the road. No stadium deal was ever completed by Rosenblum. It's a shame. Let's see. July 13, 1972, Robert Irsay made a last-minute bid of $19 million to purchase the Rams from the estate of Dan Reeves. Immediately swapped franchises with Colt owner Rosenblum, becoming the controlling partner of the Baltimore franchise the same day. Rosenblum's stadium problem became Irsay's stadium problem, with the former becoming the new tenant of the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum. Memorial Stadium's limitations remained and its amenities continued to deteriorate over time. A decade passed and still neither Irsay nor the city could agree to desperately needed improvements to the aging and tattered stadium. Irsay began to visit other cities, moving various civic leaders to put together stadium packages that would provide a better financial and physical situation for the Colts. Indianapolis was chosen. So it's a shame, but it is what it is. But it's one of those things. There you go, demolition, right? Look at that. It's just one of those things, It's that it's like, they couldn't keep the Colts there, but then all of a sudden it's like the Baltimore Ravens. Oh my God, we can build a stadium for the Ravens. It's like, well, how come you couldn't do that for the Colts? What's going on here? Yeah. It is what it is. I mean, to me, I'm an old fart. So to me, the Colts will always be the Baltimore Colts. Indianapolis, let's be the Baltimore Colts. So let's take a little bit of a few pictures here of what, of course, Memorial Stadium looks like. Yeah. There were some big games there. Some big games. 19. There we go. All right, here we go. Yeah. The what they call the Duel in the Dust, the first ever AFC championship game played between the Colts and the Raiders was played there. The 1959 championship game was played there. So the Colts, once they started around 57, they started becoming good. And, they were throughout the 60s there, especially when Don Shula took over for them. I mean, they were a powerhouse. And even in 1970 and 71, they were really, really good. And then they started some of those old, the players from the 60s started getting old. And that team after 71 started declining. In 72, they became really, really bad. But from the late 50s throughout the 60s and even up to 1971, you got like a good 15-year period there. The Baltimore Colts were always a fantastic team. Boy, I'll tell you. Here's let's see. Here you go. Here's right. I mean, to me, this is football. The baseball infield right here, right? I mean, just love it. Absolutely love it. Got this here. We've got the Colts here. 1983. I believe it might have been like the last year for them. Right? Just to me, just they got the scoreboard. This is the open end of the stadium here. Very, very classic. This is I guess is after its time had they started letting it go. Where I say, all right. Started deteriorating. Here's a YouTube video. What we got here? I mean, this is one of the things it was well known for. You see the dust kicking up and everything. I mean, yeah. You got this. I mean, even like late in the season, I mean, there was like no grass left, or I mean, it was just might have been a little bit of grass, but just a lot of dirt. Just oh my goodness. So do we have any of course the ghost to the post was played in that game, in that stadium. Here it is, right? What it looked like on the outside walking up to a Memorial Stadium. Said, I said, for a while there, it was a, it definitely, I mean, especially like the mid 60s to early 70s, the Baltimore Orioles were really, really good. And the Baltimore Orioles started becoming good once again. They won the 83 World Series as well, too. But I mean, from the mid 60s to the early 70s, the Orioles were a power. I mean, they had unbelievable pitching and the talent on the team was unbelievable. Scoreboard here. Gunter. Anyway, the Giants and the Colts. I don't know. Is this the? One of this is like the. One of this is the '59 championship game. Old time scoreboard. Well, maybe not. This can't. Maybe not because they have other games listed here. But I said, few big time games got played there. Here we go. This might have been. Here we go. This is the ghost of the post game here. After the game was over, I guess. The ghost of the post. How cool is this? I mean, you got two guys, two Hall of Famers staring at each other. You got Sam Huff here of the Redskins checking out Johnny Unitas, and in the background, I mean, it's just, you can't even see. It's like, fog. I remember how freaking cool is that, man? Huh? How cool is that? Unbelievable. Now this might have been this is definitely the '59 championship game right here. So just a cool stadium. It's a shame. One of those things. It's it started falling apart, and they couldn't come up with but it's weird. It's like, well, you couldn't keep the Colts there, but however many years later, obviously, because it's a fantastic sports area. It's about 3 miles south. 3 miles. It's about 3 hours south of where I'm at. But you couldn't keep you couldn't find something for the Colts, but you found something for the Ravens. But it is what it is. So let's get a little pregame action here. Let's see what the word on the street is here about the game. So let's go to the Baltimore Sun, the September 27th, 1959 edition of the Baltimore Sun. Baltimore Sun, here we go. Colts and Lions clash here today. A very young-looking Weeb Eubank. Now, of course, he's the only one who ever can ever be duplicated, tied, or nothing. Who won a championship in the AFL and the AFL and the NFL. Right. Of course, the Kansas City Chiefs, they won the Super Bowl. They won the AFL championship and the Super Bowl, but they never won. The Chiefs never won anything when they were part of the NFL. So, good old Weeb Eubank, good coach. At 2:03 this afternoon, they'll raise the National Football League championship flag over the stadium. From the 1958 season. At 2:05, the Detroit Lions will attempt to pull it and the Colts down as the league season gets underway before an expected sellout crowd of 57,557. Whether the Colts Lions have a sellout will depend on the weather, but with an advance sale of over 56,000 reported yesterday afternoon, the game appears in no danger of being a financial flop. The forecast from Friendship Airport says the weather at game time will be partly cloudy with a chance of some showers in the evening and at night. The temperature will be in the low 80s. Both clubs come off the exhibition season with winning records, the Lions sporting a 4-2-1 mark and Coach Weeb Eubank's Colts are 4-2. However, while the Lions came on strong in their last 3 preseason games, finding a belated offense to win, The Colts tailed off after 4 straight triumphs, losing their last 2 games. Whether the exhibition games indicate any trend or not will be found out this afternoon. The roles of today's opponents have been completely reversed. Last season, when the Lions opened the league play here, they were champions, and the Colts also ran. Now the Colts are titleless, and the Lions, off their 1959 record, just 1 jump ahead of the tail enders. As defending champions, the Colts have been made 9-point favorites. The odds also reflect the impact Colt fans have on the team. Only once in the last 6 opening games, all at home, have. All right, so let's go to the next page here. The Baltimore Suns, another September 27, 1959 edition of the Baltimore Sun. All right, here we go. All right, so that one finished. Let's see. Only once in the last 6 opening games, all at home, have the Colts lost. That time, 1954, it was the Los Angeles Rams who did the dirty work. George Wilson, Lion coach, reports only 4 players who opened the season here last year will be on the starting Detroit lineup. Ooh. Yale Larry is out. That doesn't mean the Lions are fielding a rookie team, because they're not. It does mean, however, that the injuries which belabored them last year have passed, and that last year's rookies are full-fledged veterans now. Only Yale Larry, an all-pro defensive back, will be sidelined on the Lions team. The Colts report no serious injuries, and even Raymond Berry, all-pro offensive end, will be ready and will start against the Lions. Berry has been hampered in his training all preseason with a muscle pull in his leg. As he said the other day, last year I had 5 months of practice behind me by opening day. Now I have just 5 days. Ugh. But just in the nick of time, it would seem, the Colts came up with a respectable replacement for Berry in rookie Jerry Richardson, who looks, runs, and catches passes like Raymond does. Last year, the Colts had only 2 ends in Berry and Mutcheller. No injuries cropped up in that position, which must be rated as lucky as can be. Yep. With Berry ready for duty, there will be not one rookie on the starting offense or defensive squad. In fact, the Colts only have 4 first-year men on their 36-man squad. That just goes to show you, 36-man. You dress 46 nowadays, but you got a 53-man squad nowadays, but you can only dress 46. So, you go back to the 59 here, they only had 36 guys on the whole field, the whole team, right? Now you got 46. On the offense, the Colts will have John Unitas at quarterback, Lenny Moore and L.G. Dupree at halfbacks, and Alan Amici at fullback. The offensive line, those 7 pickets behind whom the Colts backfield operates so successfully and with confidence, is composed of Berry, Parker, Art Spinney, Buzz Nutter, Alex Sandusky, George Prius, and Mutcheller. Defensively, the Colts have 6 tons of fun alternating in the forward wall. They are Gino Marchetti, Art Donovan, Big Daddy Lipscomb, Don Joyce, Ray Krause, and Ordell Brazy. And I'm trying to get the whole thing in one shot. Okay. Here are the lineups. So there you go. So you got So you got 11 guys here, right? You got another 11 here. And you got the substitutes. 11, 11 is 22, right? 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36. 36 players. That's it. I said, unlike the 46 you have today. At linebackers will be Bill Pellington, Dick Szymanski, and Don Shinnick. The secondary is Carl Tassif, Milt Davis, Andy Nelson, and Ray Brown. Tobin Rote will do the quarterbacking for the Lions, flanked by Howard Hopalong Cassidy and Dan Lewis. At fullback will be John Henry Johnson. As I'll tell you what, there are some a lot of future Hall of Famers in this game. Alternating with Johnson will be rookie Nick Petrosani of Notre Dame. The Detroit offensive line is two rookies at left guard. They are Bob Grotkow and Mike Rabel. In the defense, rookie Jim Steffen has displaced All-Pro Jim David at defensive halfback. Dave Witzel will be in Larry's spot at safety. Larry is a future Hall of Famer. So around 4:35 this afternoon, the new and shining bunting atop the north end flagpole will be flying bravely or hanging limply from the yard arm. It all depends on the outcome. Aha. Okay. All right, so that is that's the Baltimore side. What does the Detroit side have to say? So let's go to the Detroit Free Press, the September 27, 1959 edition of the Detroit Free Press. Dun, 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 dun. Share the screen. All right, there we go. All right. Well, fans, this is it. D-Day for the Lions. The day of decision is at hand for the Detroit Lions. Their future in the 1959 National Football League race will be largely revealed Sunday when they face the world champion Baltimore Colts before some 40,000. Well, they're off by a little bit in Baltimore's Memorial Stadium. The game is scheduled for 1 p.m. Detroit time and will be televised locally over WJBK TV. Although this is merely the first of 12 games in the championship schedule, it is a vital one to the Lions. Well, I mean, you got only 12 games. They're all vital. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are 17 games nowadays, but still they're very vital. Each one is very vital. But, you got back then only 12 games. Oof, everyone mattered. Coach George Wilson considers a major test which will reveal that the Lions can expect and what can be expected of them through the remainder of the season. We'll know after this game just what we've got, Wilson says. Those most keenly interested in such things believe the Colts simply have too much for the Lions. Baltimore has been made a whopping 9.5-point favorite. There is much about the Colts to support such confidence. Following up their highly successful 58 campaign, the Colts still have in their ranks the greatest collection of talent in football. The rivals concede that the Colts have the finest quarterback in the game, Johnny Unitas. Yep. The biggest and best defensive line between Marchetti at 240, Art Donovan at 270, Big Daddy Lipscomb at 288, and Don Joyce at 255. The most effective blocking offensive line anchored by two of the finest ends in pro ball, Ray Berry and Jim Mutscheller. The most dangerous breakaway threat in the NFL, Lenny Moore, and a feared fullback, Alan Amici. With all this, how can the Colts lose? Man for man, the Lions cannot rate with them. Yet the Lions of other years have won with stubbornness where brilliance had failed. Wilson plainly is counting on this to do the trick again. The Lions will be handicapped. Jim Doran, the most reliable of the pass receivers, has been slow to recover from a leg muscle injury. Defensive halfback Yale Larry, who could have been an important figure in controlling the United's passing attack, will miss the game. He too has a leg injury. Oh yeah, he will be sorely missed in this game. I can tell you that much. Aside from those two, however, the Lions are in good shape and apparently primed for an explosive opening of the campaign. They won the final 3 games of their preseason schedule and at times showed an offense capable of carrying them much higher than their 5th place finish in 1958. Our running game is greatly improved with Danny Lewis, John Henry Johnson, and Nick Petrosani working, Wilson says. Wilson brushes off suggestions that the Detroit defense, long the strongest feature of the Lion organization, will not be as tough this season. He sees no reason why this should be so. With all of this, the Lions are placing themselves in the hands of Tobin Rote, the veteran quarterback. Among them, the consensus is that Rote, given a good year, can take them to the championship again. They'll know soon enough whether this is really so. They got Olympia hockey here. Wow, how about that? The Red Wings versus Hershey. All right, there you go. The Detroit Red Wings. Well, there was, Tobin Rote had some good moments in preseason. That was for sure. One of the, and so many cigarette ads. But during the preseason, Tobin Rote, had some good moments. That is for sure. That is without question. A lot of it had to do with his blocking, obviously. If he was given enough time, most quarterbacks given enough time would be successful. And that was the case in some of the games when he was given adequate blocking and he had time, and he would also take off and run as well too. But when he had adequate time, he was able to move the ball and put some points on the board for the Lions. When there was times where his offensive line could not hold up, their offense was a shambles. So let's start the game, shall we? Let's see what happened. So let's go back to the Detroit Free Press, the September 28th, 1959 edition of the Detroit Free Press. Exactly what happened during the game? Well, glad you asked. All right, let's see here. Dun, 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 dun. Lions, no stayers. Colts win 21-9. 2 United's TD passes turn the tide. Now you see, now this was as wanted to be in a bear. 5, they picked off 5 passes. Now the Colts were only 13 out of 31, which is basically the same as 12 out of 29. But they picked off 5 passes. But you'll see both teams had the same amount of first downs. The Lions actually had more rushing yards. Colts had more passing yards. And the Lions were winning. We're winning this game. And what do we got here? Oh, this is Raymond Berry. Lions vaunted pass defense surrounds Ray Berry, but only after he had the football. For a long while Sunday, our Lions seemed to promise great things. Promise may still be there, but now it is not nearly so strong or compelling. The classy Baltimore Colts balked through a rugged first half, systematically picked apart the Lions' injury-torn pass defense in the second half, and steamed to a 21-9 triumph in the opening game of the National Football League season for both teams. A near-capacity crowd at 55,538 Memorial Stadium sat in stony silence for much of the afternoon while Tobin Rote and rookie Nick Petrosani spirited the surprisingly tough Lions to a 9-0 lead in the third period. Detroit was obviously primed to produce a major upset and install itself as a leading contender for the world championship held by these same Colts. The defense, for the most part, was stout, and Rote had protection he seldom has received. The heralded Colt line was held at bay in the early portions, and the Lions were in control of football's greatest team. That was a situation after Rote and Petrosani had finished a punishing and impressive push for the Lions' only touchdown. Then Unitas, who had little success early, suddenly seemed to solve the Detroit defense. He needed a major break to give the Colts impetus, and once he got it, the Colts quickly seized command of the game and at the end left the Lions a thoroughly beaten and disappointed club. The big break came on a Unitas pass to Allen Amici as the Colts struggled upfield, trying desperately to get their offense moving. Amici was hit by Detroit defense and fumbled, but Lenny Moore recovered for the Colts and carried the ball down to the Detroit 22. The move put new life into the Colts. They pushed into... Is that all? That's all for this one? Okay. Colts pushed into score with Amici hammering over from the 1-yard line to cut Detroit's lead to 9-7. When next the Colts got the ball, Unitas moved them into the winning touchdown. It was a quick advance, a 34-yard pass to Mutscheller, followed by an 18-yard shot to Raymond Berry, who had eluded Terry Barr at the goal line. The Lions never seriously threatened to get back in the game. Earl Morrall replaced Rote for one series at the start of the fourth period, and it resulted in another Baltimore score. Carl Tassif intercepted a Morrall pass and brought it back to the Detroit 23. L.G. Dupree eluded Gary Lowe and Jim David in the end zone to take in a pass from United, and only a penalty wiped out the score. It only delayed the Colts, though, because Mutscheller came back a moment later, scooted behind Lowe and Dave Witzel, and took a 40-yard pass from United for a clinching score and a 21-9 lead. Detroit suffered with wasted opportunity and sometimes erratic passing by Rote, who had difficulty hitting his receivers. The Colts further balked the Lions by picking off 5 passes, although 3 of these came on deflections. One of these deflections cost the Lions dearly in the first half and prevented them from seizing a more comfortable lead. Baltimore had punched 79 yards in a long 17-play advance, only to be thwarted at the Detroit 1 midway in the second period. Given such a boost, the Lions went on the march, and with the bullish Petrosani accounting for 45 yards, they advanced to the Baltimore 8. An 18-yard run with a pass by Petrosani put them there. On the very next play, however, Rote's intended quick pass over the line was swatted into the air, and Gino Marchetti took it in for the Colts, killing the threat. Less than 2 minutes before the half, the Lions had still another chance at the Colt 37, but another interception, this one from Ray Brown, ruined them. So a lot of times when you get those interceptions or turnovers, a lot of times it's like one or two things either winds up happening. It either takes points away from you, because a lot of times you might be down in scoring range, you turn it over, so you lost possible points, or it winds up giving the other team points. So those 5 interceptions cost the Lions dearly in this game. Let's see, less than 2 minutes before the half, the Lions had still another chance. Okay, and Ray Brown intercepted that one. The Lions had their early 3-0 lead on a 33-yard field goal by Jim Martin late in the first period. The Lions moved strongly after taking the second half kickoff and built their lead to 9-0 on a 7-yard smash by Danny Lewis. Perhaps it was an omen when Jim Martin then fluffed the extra point kick. Baltimore came on immediately to take control of the game. There you go. Got your free press college football here. Lions had an excuse, though, but nobody cared. Only 3 backs after half. Did the Baltimore Colts realize how bad the Lions were hurt? That was the intriguing question in the aftermath of the Colts' 21-9 defeat of the Detroit Lions Sunday. Detroit's pass defense sagged in the second half as the Colts rallied for 3 touchdowns. Lion coaches were not about to blame their defensive halfbacks. We played the second half with only 3 able-bodied halfbacks. Wow, said George Wilson. Gary Lowe suffered a Charlie horse in the second period. Lowe played the third period despite aggravating pain and was victimized by the winning touchdown. Middleton, a receiver, finished. Rave Middleton, a receiver, finished. So they wound up with a receiver playing in the defensive halfback. That's the way it is when you only got 36 players. Nowadays, my goodness, with the amount of safeties that they have and cornerbacks, you got to have at least 7 defensive backs going into a football game. Well, apparently they only had 4. So with the cornerbacks and the safeties, so the Lions had no choice except to play low and hope that he could cover his ground. Injuries already had knocked out Yale Larry and Jim Steffen. Steffen was hurt in practice last Friday, but the injury was kept secret. Jimmy David, oldest of the Lions' defensive backs, had one of the best days against the Colts. David was assigned to guard Lenny Moore, and he kept him under control except for one early 37-yard grab. Sorely disappointed, Wilson believed sharper passing by rote and more productive work when scoring opportunities beckoned could have made a winner of the Lions. The difference, said Wilson, was that their quarterback was hitting his receivers and ours was not. Rote completed only 11 of 27 passes. Earl Marley hit on one or 2. Rote had 4 passes intercepted and Earl Morrill 1. Yeah, you throw 5 interceptions. Oof. We had our chances in the first half, Wilson said, and it should have came out of it with possibly a 2-touchdown lead. The Lions reached the Colts' 7-yard line and the 37 late in the second period. Both times pass interceptions killed them. Johnny United passing average was not much better than Rote's, really, but Johnny hit his when they counted. He connected on only 13 of 30 passes, but they went for 230 yards and 2 touchdowns. So, I don't know what exactly that is, 17, 18 yards of pass completion. So, this was the 26th straight game, a record in which Unitas was thrown at least 1 touchdown pass. And he would go on to, I think it was 47 games in a row he threw a touchdown pass for. The man was unbelievable. Nick Petrosani is destined to become a hero first class for the Lions. The big Notre Dame rookie crashed the Colts' heralded line for 48 yards in 8 tries, second only to Rote's 52 yards in 9 tries, and took 2 passes for 9 yards. So, it just goes to show you what do we got here? We're going to go to, we're going to go to the Baltimore Sun, the September 28th, 1959 edition of the Baltimore Sun. Baltimore Sun. Should get the page right here. Page, okay. Guess that's right. Try this. But it just goes to show you, that continued from the first. Oh, wait. Is that, they had some crazy stuff going on. If you got enough guys, I mean, usually if you got one, you can even lose a couple guys nowadays. Due to injuries during the game, like a cornerback, and you still would have maybe an additional cornerback on the sideline to bring in. Now he may not be very good, but he would be a cornerback. Back then, sometimes as they might only had maybe four able cornerback, of course, safety, guys in the secondary playing. Maybe five, maybe at the because every position was very very valuable back then. So, as you saw, right, they had somebody hurt in the secondary and had wanted to finish in the game with putting a wide receiver back there. All right. Here's Raymond Berry. Looks like it may be his first touchdown. Is this it? On target, but no good. Johnny Unitas pass to Raymond Berry appears to be a Colt touchdown, but Terry Barr of the Lions reached around Berry to bat down the pass. Other Colts are Jim Mutscheller in the foreground and Art Spinney, 63. Number 71 is Alex Karras of Detroit. Number 47 is Jim Martin. The play cost the Colts a score in the second period. Well, 3 quick touchdowns erase a 9-0 third period lead in the stadium tilt. Unitas finds touch and directs 3 drives with scores going to Amici, Berry, and Mutscheller. Last 2 cross on passes. During one 11-minute, 18-second stretch, the Colts scored 3 touchdowns to erase a 9-point Detroit bulge and present the 55,588 fans an opening day victory of 21-9 at Memorial Stadium yesterday. Except for that torrid span in the third and fourth period, ignited by some fancy passing by John Unitas, the Colts had their hands full to keep the newly acquired National Football League championship flag waving bravely on the flagpole at the north end of the field. Cardiac John, added a few more heart patients to his growing list by waiting until 9 minutes and 50 seconds of the third period had elapsed before leading the Colts into pay dirt. Here's that Johnny Unitas and his mates did it. Spotting the Lions a 9-point advantage at 5:10 of the third period when Dan Lewis raced 9 yards for the lone Detroit touchdown. Unitas rallied the Colts and pushed them 66 yards in 13 plays with Alan Amici bowling over from the 18-inch line. After Steve Myers kicked, the Lions' margin was cut to 9-7. Time to go, 9 minutes and 50 seconds. Time gone, 9 minutes and 50 seconds. The kickoff, 4 Lion plays, including a punt to the Colt 34, and 4 Colt plays produced the go-ahead touchdown with Unitas connecting with Raymond Berry for the last 18 yards. The time between Colt touchdowns was just 5 minutes and 38 seconds. Unitas extends his streak. Incidentally, the Unitas to Berry pass ran John's all-league record of consecutive game touchdown tosses to 26. Both teams wasted a series of downs as the fourth quarter began. But Carl Tassif put the Colts on the beam again by intercepting an Earl Morrill pass on the Colt 34 and returning it 43 yards down to the Detroit 26. Series of penalties moved the pigskin first to the Lions 13 and then back to the 40 before Unitas, dodging tacklers, spotted and connected with Jim Mutscheller for the touchdown that put the Colts beyond the reach of the visitors. The time of the last Colt touchdown and the last point of the game was 6:08 of the fourth period. Unitas seen difference. George Wilson, Lion coach, said the difference was in the quarterbacks, with Unitas hitting his receivers and Tobin Road and Morrill missing Detroit catchers. But a look at the statistics shows Unitas he had very identical passing stats, at least completion percentage-wise. But a look at the statistics shows Unitas didn't have his usual hot hand, completing on only 13 of 30 passes. Although his 13 receptions gained 230 yards, though. The Lions passing pair connected on 12 of 29 tosses for 189 yards. They also allowed 5 Colt interceptions, which were enough to blast any attack. All the Colts' first half, and I'm going to have to, this is another story here, so I'm going to have to go back and forth. All of the Colts' first half miss. First half miseries couldn't be blamed on Unitas. Here's Mutt Scheller receiving a pass, who was a little off with his shots. On several occasions, L.G. Dupree dropped aerials in his hands. Even that didn't hurt too much. If the Colt defense wouldn't have played patsy for the Lions' old split T option play, it was not until the Lions scored their third quarter touchdown that the Colts' left side solved the mysteries behind the option run of Rote. Once the Colt defense stopped the option, the game was safely in hand for the defending champions. Here's how effective the option was for the Lions. Rote was the leading Detroit ground gainer with 52 yards on 9 carries for an average of nearly 6 per trip. If he had been sharp with his passing, the score at the end of the half could have well been Lions 24-0. As it was, the Lions were stalled not by the Colts, but by lack of accuracy from the thrower. Although dominating play in the first period, the Lions had to settle for a 33-yard field goal by veteran Jim Martin in the last minute of the first quarter to get on the scoreboard. Then came a Colt drive, and another example of the gambling instincts of Unitas and Coach Weeb Eubank, as they went for a TD instead of a field goal, which would have tied. With Amici doing most of the heavy work, and the horse was never better or more rugged, the Colts moved from their own 29 down to the Lions' trade with just 3 yards to go and 4 chances to make the touchdown. They turned the ball over to the Lions on their 4 after Dupree lost a yard. 2 Unitas passes were incomplete, and Moore's end sweep gained nothing. That they didn't desert their take-a-chance style was fortunate, because that is what brought them back in the third period. On the first Colts scoring drive, a 4th and yard to go situation came up on the Lions' 44. Unitas gave to Amici, the top ground gainer of the day, with 69 yards for the first down. Then during the fourth period touchdown march, a Unitas to Dupree touchdown pass was called back, and the Colts penalized back to the 30. Not discouraged, even after he had been smeared while attempting to pass on the 40, Unitas needed 37 yards for a first down on third, elected to go for the 6-pointer instead of moving the ball in the field goal kicking range. He was rushed. One of the few times the Colts' offensive fence was scaled, but adroitly sidestepped the tackle and caught Mutt Scheller crossing into the end zone. Not enough credit can be given to Mutt Scheller, who has played under the shadow of Raymond Berry. Jim, a quiet, assuming player, grabbed 4 aerials for 89 yards, an average of 22 yards of reception. Nick Petrosani of the Lions and Notre Dame gave indications yesterday that John Henry Johnson might not long be holding forth a fullback for the Detroit club. Nick lived up to advanced billings and then some, planting 48 yards on 8 tries, 6 yards a carry. Very impressive. So here is the total net yards, both the same, right? 339 to 334. There's 5 interceptions, they're killers. Absolute killers. Fumbles, opponent fumble, recoveries. So each team fumbled, but opponents fumbled. Neither team lost the ball. So basically, the Colts, were a +5 in the turnover department. And you're a +5. Usually you're going to wind up winning a football game. All right. All right, so then we got, let's see here. We go back here. And there's another. Yeah. Adjustment saves the Colts. A couple of fairly and simple adjustments. During halftime, helped the Colts look like world champions again through the final two quarters yesterday. We just weren't running our pass patterns properly, Coach Eubank said in the steaming dressing room following the game, and we had to take care of that option play the Lions were using. That plus Johnny and I's quick return to form and Jim Mutcheller's circus performance sent the Colts on their way to their 21-9 opening day victory over Detroit. The tackling is poor. We weren't tackling in the first half either, Eubank said. Someone called it patty cake tackling. Eubank agreed. We just weren't doing the things in the first half we're supposed to do, he said. I feel better about his team than I did a year ago. We've got better balance. In other words, the chunky coach thinks the 1959 Colts are better than the world champions of last year. Hal Lewis has come a long way, and Art DiCarlo is running good pass patterns for us. And it's nice to have a boy who not only kicks 50 yards, but gets height also, the way Dave Scherer did today. Eubank grinned. You've got to figure a team like Detroit is going to score 17 points. We held them to 9, so our defense did a great job. Rope broke away for good yardage in the first half on a split T type option play, but the Colts were ready for it in the third quarter. We just changed the linebacker's assignment enough to stop it, Eubank said. The Colt players and the coaching staff were in agreement the Lions have a tough club. Tobin Rote is a good quarterback, but fortunately for the Colts, he didn't have a good day. If he had been on the Colts, might have been trailing at half. Whoops. Might have been trailing at half. Yeah. Halftime by 3 touchdowns rather than just 3 points. The Lions coach, George Wilson, said he thought his team should have been more than 3 points. Had more than 3 points in the first half. But what can you say when you've had 5 passes intercepted? Which is true. Moncheller had to carry the pass-catching load yesterday because Raymond Berry still isn't at par physically, and Lenny Moore didn't have one of his better days. Moncheller caught a 40-yarder from Unitas for 1 touchdown, but his greatest contribution was a diving grab of a pass on the Lions 25 that set up the Baltimore's go-ahead touchdown in the third quarter. Unitas on the touchdown pass to Moncheller was trapped behind the line, then fired a strike to Moncheller, cutting through the Detroit end zone. I had it in my mind to run at first, but saw Jim had a chance to get away and threw it to him. I knew he could get it farther than I could. Almost overlooked in Unitas' resurgence in the second half was the performance of fullback Alan Amici. He carried 19 times for 69 yards, not much of an average, but he picked up his gains in important spots. He was pretty well battered after the game, with the Colts escape with no serious hurts. The first one was a big hurdle for the defending champions, and as Eubank said, I don't know about the fans, but you have to be nuts to be a football coach. Unitas needed 6 stitches to close a cut in his chin. Wow. Milt Davis fractured his thumb, and Hal Lewis received a broken rib. Whew. Incidentally, it was lucky Eubank didn't break his leg after Big Daddy Lipscomb deflected a pass into Gino Marchetti's arms in the second quarter. The Lions won the Colts 7 when Lipscomb batted Rote's pass straight up. It came down in Marchetti's hands, and as the Colt offensive team streamed onto the field, Eubank practically rode Unitas' shoulder, giving him some last-second instructions. Yeah. All right, so let's see what we got now. So that's the fifth. That. Okay, now we got. So we got another one here. Page 30. Okay. All right. So we got, we got another article here to read from the Baltimore Sun, September 28th, 1959. Get this here up and running. Let's see here. Oh, there we go. All right. September 28th, 1959 at the Baltimore Sun. There we go. Look at that crowd, huh? Love our Colts. Twisting Lion's Tail, part of the shirt sleeve crowd of 55,000 who whooped it up as the Colts beat Detroit Lions in the first home game of the Professional Football League season. All right, what do we got here? What do we got? Colts defeat. Oh, we got hoof beats or bird chirps. Screams erased all doubts. Colts defeat Lions 21-9 before 55,588. It was baseball weather yesterday, but anyone with a mile of the stadium could have known the Colts had come back to town. That is because the fans of Baltimore's football team do not cheer like the followers of baseball. They scream. It is almost a frightening sound for a person sitting down on the playing field where he hears this ear-piercing noise and looks up at a double-deck assembly of some 55,000 people beside themselves with glee. There is another noise heard down on the field, which is even more disturbing, however. This sound comes when a blue-shirted man drops a pass or is thrown for a loss. It is a groan that must disturb the dead. Yesterday's contest with the Detroit Lions consisted of 2 quarters of groaning and 2 quarters of shrieking. Fortunately for the Colts, the sorrow preceded the joy, and the game concluded with a note of triumph for Baltimore. Things were pretty bad in that first half, and there were some fairly bitter comments behind the stands as people jostled for hot dogs and drinks. If you ask me, they're stinking up that field, was one unsolicited remark. Man, Webank better talk to them. These Lions are ready, was another. The Detroit team was leading. All right, we got another article here. Let's see. All right, so let's see. Okay. We got one more here. One more page here. The same thing, the Baltimore Sun. September 28th, 1959 edition of the Baltimore Sun. All right. Detroit was leading 3-0 at the half, and in truth, it was not altogether unexpected. There were people in the stands before the game who were concerned, no doubt mindful of the Colts' losses in the last 2 exhibition games. A.D. Jackson, a construction foreman and a season ticket holder, was seated with his wife, Isabel, on the 10-yard line an hour before the kickoff. I picked them to finish second, Mr. Jackson said as he talked of the game at hand and the long season ahead. First place, he said L.A. Well, he's absolutely wrong on that one. L.A. would finish in last place. Later on in the conversation, Mr. Jackson said maybe the Colts might finish first if there are no injuries and if they play as a team. Mrs. Jackson said she was a recent convert to Coltism and indicated she knew little about the game until her husband bought season tickets 2 years ago. Gino helped sell me, Mrs. Jackson said of Gino Marchetti, big defensive end. He's pretty colorful, she added with a shy smile. In another part of the stands, a man who did not wish to have his name attached to his opinion was a bit more blunt. Brother, he said, they better do better than in those last two exhibitions. They're going to have to play some football, and I mean in every game, if they want to win the Western Conference. Another season ticket holder, Frederick Tolberg of the 7800 block of Winbrook Road in Essex, was much more optimistic. I think they will win, was the unequivocal approach of Mr. Tolberg, who has been a season ticket holder ever since the Colts returned to the National Football League. I think the Bears will give us the most trouble. How right he was. The Colts finished 9-3. The Bears finished 8-4. I think the Bears will give us the most trouble, not the Rams, he said from his seat on the 30-yard line. His brother-in-law, Carl Barlow of the 1900 block Wildwood Avenue in Parkville, was cautious but hopeful. I think we ought to be in again, Mr. Barlow remarked, but added quickly, it's going to be rough. One game does not make a season, but yesterday's phrase seems to bear out, Mr. Barlow. Governor Tawes, sitting down on the Colt bench before the game, was optimistic but rather non-committal. I think Weeb Eubank has put together a good team, and I think we have every right to expect a good performance, said the governor. Mayor Grady, seated behind Mr. Tawes, said, I'm very optimistic about the season. Chatting with the two men was Carol Rosenblum, Colts president. Asked for a comment about the upcoming season, Mr. Rosenblum winced and groaned just as any Colt fan would. Mr. Rosenblum and his customers do not merely attend games, they suffer through them. Even talk of future contests seems to bring pained expressions to all their faces. Mr. Rosenblum raised his eyes above and said, most sincerely, if the man up there smiles on us, we'll do it. Later, Bailey Goss gave Mr. Rosenblum the championship flag and a midfield ceremony before the opening kickoff. The flag was symbolic of the Colts winning the league title last year. The Colts president looked up at 2 decks of sports shirts and summer dresses. Certainly you have been the world's greatest fans, he said. I do not have words to tell you what is in our hearts. We will try to deserve the faith you have in us. God bless you. Then at the open end of the field, another copy of the championship flag was raised above the green shrubbery. You would have thought it was the millennium. All right. I think that's it. So that was pretty much like, kind of like I guess in a nutshell, I guess you want to say, kind of like the whole season. I mean, because obviously with the Colts, what they did in the championship game, it was 9-7. They scored 1 touchdown through the first 45 minutes. They went into the fourth quarter. They had 1 touchdown. That's all they had. And then bam, 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 bam. One of them, they picked the pass off and ran it back for a touchdown. But, they could score points in bunches in a hurry. And that's what they did here as well today in this one particular game. And as I said, for the Lions, hey, they got a good defense. They always had a tough defense, which, helped keep them in the game for a period of time. But, as what happened, as one of their biggest problems was always seemed to score points. They always had that tough defense, especially I'm going through the 60s, right? But a lot of times their offense was just not, up to par, shall we say. And during the exhibition season, when Tobin Road was on, as I said, he could run, he could pick up yards running with his legs, but when he had protection and when he was on with his passing, obviously Detroit would put up some points and score, and that just wasn't the case in this one game here. Poor passing and plus the 5 interceptions that he threw were just too much. As I said, usually, the interceptions either take points away from you or usually give points to the other team. And that was the case here. I mean, if Detroit had built up a bigger lead earlier on, which they could have, the outcome of this game might have been different. But yeah, as we see after the whole season, if you look back at this one game, the better team, maybe, not so much, I mean, they're fairly even except for those in this game, fairly except for those turnovers. The better team wound up winning this game. I said, and of course the Colts were on their way to winning the division, and of course the championship, and of course the Detroit Lions, who didn't wind up in the last place, only had 3 wins on the season. So it is what it is. So that's the way it was on this date, September 27th, 1959, as the Detroit Lions invaded Memorial Stadium to take on the Baltimore Colts in pro football, first 50 years. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.